But Trump had good advice. He told him, just have fun. And you know what? It seems like he did.
I want to answer the question, but I want to actually give an introduction to myself a little bit because I recognize a lot of Americans don't know who either one of us are.
That's how you get the single cat ladies back on your side. You know, in some ways, you can't help but you kind of feel sympathy for J.D. Vance having to defend Donald Trump, who he himself openly denounced. It's kind of like being Diddy's defense attorney, you know?
What started as just another late-night comedy segment quickly turned into something much bigger when Jimmy Kimmel built an entire routine around J.D. Vance's own public statements and campaign appearances. Instead of making fun of Vance's personality or personal habits, Kimmel focused on the tough position Vance had put himself in as one of Donald Trump's strongest defenders during one of the most closely watched moments of the campaign. He opened with a joke about Trump's reported advice before the debate, saying the former president probably just told Vance to go out there and have fun, before jumping straight into one of the biggest moments of the night. Kimmel replayed the clip of Vance introducing himself and pointing out that a lot of Americans still didn't know much about either candidate, then immediately flipped that serious introduction into a joke about trying to win over single cat ladies. What was supposed to be a simple opening suddenly became one of the biggest laughs of the night. From there, Kimmel took it even further, saying there was something oddly uncomfortable about watching Vance defend Trump so passionately when he had spent years publicly criticizing him. That history became the foundation of Kimmel's monologue because, in his view, seeing Vance stand so firmly beside Trump after once condemning him was a contradiction that was impossible to ignore. He wrapped up the point with one of his sharpest jokes of the night, saying that defending Trump after all those past comments was like becoming Diddy's lawyer.
Tim just said something that I agree with. I agree, and I actually think I agree with you. I actually agree with Tim Walz.
I agree with a lot of what Senator Vance said.
Governor, I agree with you.
I agree with that.
And I think that Governor Walz and I actually probably agreed.
Well, Trump is not going to like that at all. You're in a lot of trouble, J.D.
The audience immediately got where Kimmel was going, and the laughs came almost right away. From there, he moved on to another debate moment that had already started making the rounds online. During the vice presidential debate, J.D. Vance kept telling Tim Walz, "I agree," before explaining where they saw things differently, and Kimmel completely ran with it. He acted out the exchange in an exaggerated way, making it seem like Vance agreed with absolutely everything Walz said, no matter what the topic was. He kept repeating, "I agree," over and over, pushing the joke a little further each time until it felt like Vance had forgotten he was supposed to be debating the other side at all. The crowd loved it because the repetition became even funnier than the original moment itself, turning a simple debate habit into one of the biggest laughs of the night.
Trump, last night he posted an announcement. He said, "I will be doing a personal play-by-play of the debate tomorrow between the brilliant J.D. Vance and the highly inarticulate tampon Tim Walz. I hope that cognitively challenged lion Kamala Harris will be listening so that she can again show the world how she will make up false facts and stories. I will be commenting on what is going on. Watch Truth Social tomorrow night." Watch Truth Social. You can barely even read Truth Social.
Kimmel then turned his attention to how Donald Trump might have reacted while watching his running mate agree with the other side so many times on national television. He joked that Trump probably wasn't too happy hearing those words repeated over and over by his own vice presidential pick. When Kimmel wrapped up the bit by saying Vance might be in serious trouble, it was clearly meant as a joke, not a prediction of any real consequences. The humor landed because of Trump's long-standing reputation for expecting complete loyalty and strong public support from the people around him. Kimmel painted a funny picture of Trump getting more annoyed every time Vance said, "I agree," during the debate, as if each new agreement brought him one step closer to an awkward conversation behind closed doors. That setup turned what would normally be an ordinary debate habit into an extended comedy routine. Instead of focusing on policy differences or campaign issues, Kimmel kept the spotlight on appearances, tone, and political optics, arguing that even moments meant to sound respectful and reasonable could easily turn into embarrassing headlines.
J.D. Vance is definitely not a pot smoker. His eyes are too blue. If J.D. Vance smoked a joint, it'd be like looking into two little American flags on his face. But he seems like he's high all the time. It seems like he ate a fistful of gummies. Over the summer, J.D. had a lot of trouble in a donut.
After finishing his jokes about Truth Social and the debate, Kimmel switched gears and leaned into visual comedy by focusing on J.D. Vance's appearance and facial expressions. He joked that Vance definitely didn't look like someone who smoked marijuana because, according to Kimmel, his eyes were just too blue for that image to make sense. Then he took the joke even further, imagining that if Vance ever did smoke a joint, it would look like two tiny American flags staring back at you from his face. Kimmel kept piling on the ridiculous mental pictures, saying that even though Vance didn't look like a smoker, he somehow always seemed like he was just a little bit high anyway. He even joked joked that Vance looked like someone who had spent the whole summer eating handfuls of gummies, making it clear the exaggeration was purely for laughs and not meant as a factual claim. The comedy was all about creating absurd images and getting people to laugh at Vance's expressions and delivery rather than his politics. Kimmel kept building on that idea by suggesting Vance often had such a relaxed, detached look that even his normal facial expressions became punchlines on their own. None of this had anything to do with campaign strategy, speeches, or policy. It was pure visual comedy, meant to make viewers see Vance in a funny way every time he appeared on screen. By that point, Kimmel's style was easy to spot as he moved smoothly between debate clips, Trump's Truth Social posts, and Vance's public appearances, tying everything together into one larger comedy routine.
Open a Bud Light and relax already. Even the vice president took a break from pumping his ottoman to complain about not just me, you.
On Jimmy Kimmel's television program and on The Daily Show this week, you have audiences outright cheering, seeing the images of Teslas on fire across the country. And I saw that and I thought, man, that really is a sign of how much the left has conditioned people to think that that's acceptable.
In the end, every joke came back to the same basic idea. J.D. Vance had become one of the easiest people in politics for comedians to joke about because almost every public appearance seemed to hand them fresh material. Whether it was his debate introduction, how often he said, "I agree," his appearances alongside Donald Trump, or even the expressions he made on camera, Kimmel argued that Vance unintentionally gave late-night television an endless supply of content. Instead of inventing stories or creating fake controversies, Kimmel kept using Vance's own words, facial expressions, and campaign moments, then reshaped them into punchlines that fit the bigger story he was telling. That story painted Vance as a politician trying to hold on to his own identity while staying closely aligned with Donald Trump and his political movement. Because Kimmel stuck with that theme from beginning to end, the monologue felt focused, with each joke building on the last and setting the stage for the increasingly personal back and forth that was starting to take shape between the comedian and the vice president.
If you can square your fervent belief in free speech with what's going on now with Jimmy Kimmel and the FCC pressure, I'd love to hear your thoughts on both of those.
Well, look, on the free speech conversation, I'm pretty sure that Jimmy Kimmel was back on the air last night, and to the extent that he's not back on the air, it's because he's not funny and has terrible ratings. This is not a federal government problem.
As time went on, the back and forth between Jimmy Kimmel and J.D. Vance grew into something much bigger than a typical late-night rivalry. It turned into a public clash over free speech, television ratings, and claims of political bias. One of the biggest moments came when Vance responded to accusations that pressure from the Federal Communications Commission had somehow affected Kimmel's place on television. Vance dismissed that idea completely, pointing out that Kimmel was still on the air and arguing that if he ever did disappear from television, it wouldn't be because of government pressure. According to Vance, it would simply be because audiences stopped finding him funny and his ratings dropped. He repeated that point while talking about the broader challenges facing late-night television, saying the format itself was losing popularity and suggesting that Kimmel had become so focused on politics that entertainment had taken a back seat. Vance also stressed that no government action had been taken against Kimmel, arguing that comments made online by the FCC chairman were not proof of any official effort to silence him or push him off television.
Vice President Maybelline was making the rounds, attempting to defend his boss and the chairman of the FCC with a new fairy tale even a 5-year-old wouldn't believe.
Vance also argued that supporting free speech means accepting that television networks have the right to make business decisions based on audience interest and overall performance. Throughout his comments, he stayed consistent with that message, repeatedly coming back to the idea that, in the end, ratings and viewership are what decide what remains on television and what eventually gets taken off the air.
Celebrities are rallying to his cause, saying this is a First Amendment assault being carried out by the FCC, Brendan Carr, and by the President of the United States himself. And to that you say?
Well, there are two things. First of all, I'd like them to tell me exactly what Brendan Carr did to have Jimmy Kimmel taken off the air, because number one, he is currently on the air, and to the extent that he isn't in certain states.
Vance firmly rejected the idea that there had been any censorship or political retaliation, arguing that the whole debate was really about audience numbers, not constitutional rights. He also criticized the celebrities who came to Kimmel's defense and portrayed the situation as an attack on the First Amendment. In Vance's view, those claims greatly exaggerated what had actually happened and didn't accurately reflect the reality of the situation.
Was taken off the air because he had low ratings, because the late night talk show host model was not doing particularly well, and let's be honest, because he had become so politically unhinged that I think he wasn't particularly funny. Now, the FCC chairman, Brendan Carr, put out a couple of tweets, but the government took no action. We did literally nothing to try to take Jimmy Kimmel off the air. We believe in free speech. speech, we also believe in the right of a television station or a network to cancel somebody because of low ratings.
Rather than accepting the idea that politics had anything to do with Kimmel's situation, Vance kept coming back to the same point. Television networks make business decisions, and ratings are what matter most. According to him, the federal government had no role in forcing Kimmel off the air or influencing what happened to his future on television. That position turned what started as a series of comedy monologues into a much broader debate, with Kimmel and Vance offering two completely different ways of interpreting the same events. Kimmel responded exactly the way his audience would expect, leaning into comedy instead of long explanations or political arguments. After hearing Vance's comments about ratings, he joked about his own numbers before quickly turning the punchline back on the vice president. Kimmel quipped that Vance's approval ratings rank somewhere between finding a hair in your salad and catching chlamydia, landing one of the biggest laughs of the night through a mix of exaggeration, shock value, and classic late-night sarcasm.
My ratings aren't very good. Last time I checked, your ratings were somewhere between a hair in your salad and chlamydia. In 3.5 years, I'm not the one who's going to be doing mascara tutorials on YouTube. How did we wind up with a president and a vice president who wear more makeup than Kylie Jenner and Lady Gaga combined?
Instead of trying to defend his television performance with statistics or audience numbers, Kimmel simply made J.D. Vance the punchline. He kept the joke going by imagining a future where Vance had left politics behind and was now making makeup tutorials on YouTube. Kimmel pushed the idea even further by joking about how America somehow ended up with a president and vice president who, in his opinion, wore more makeup than Kylie Jenner and Lady Gaga combined. It was classic late-night comedy, answering criticism not with serious debates or policy discussions, but with another round of sarcasm, exaggeration, and jokes. Throughout the entire back and forth, Kimmel stayed with the same style he had used from the beginning when he first started making fun of Vance's debate performance. He relied on sharp one-liners, playful insults, and over-the-top comparisons instead of treating Vance's comments as a serious political argument. Looking back at the entire feud, one theme kept showing up again and again. Kimmel consistently portrayed Vance as a politician caught between defending Donald Trump and dealing with the memory of his own past criticism of him. Every debate appearance, interview, and campaign moment became another chance for Kimmel to point out what he saw as contradictions or uncomfortable moments. Vance, meanwhile, responded by defending both Trump and himself while arguing that the criticism surrounding Kimmel had nothing to do with government pressure and everything to do with the business side of television. The result was a public clash where every new interview, joke, and headline quickly became material for the other side. What started as a few jokes about debate moments eventually grew into a much bigger rivalry between one of late night's most outspoken comedians and the vice president himself, with audiences waiting to see who would deliver the next memorable hit in an increasingly personal back and forth.